What's up, guys? I'm EJ. I'm joined by Kendall, and thank you so much for checking out this edition of our virtual NBA Draft War Room. Today, we're going to be talking about the Indiana Pacers. Kind of the Pacers, interesting team here. We're talking about the NBA Draft because they don't have a pick in the first round. In fact, their first pick is at number 54 in the second round. And, yeah, there are probably some guys, and I'll give you a guy or two that maybe they could look at that number 54 pick, but they come into this offseason kind of a interesting situation because you fired the head coach Nate McMillan. The mandate is they need to play faster, and you have two star players on the team that apparently don't want to be there. At least one we know for sure with Oladipo, and there's whispers that Turner may also want out too. So a lot of things could happen. The Pacers to me look like the team that could probably be one of the more active teams in this NBA draft when it comes to trades potentially. So that's why we're going to talk about them also in the first round in terms of players they could target because they have the capital to potentially move up pretty high in this draft.
Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, the reports are out there about Oladipo. Whether or not they are true, we don't know, but we do know that he's a free agent next year. So, if there's any inclination that maybe he doesn't plan on re-signing, you have to see you have to at least explore what you could possibly get for Oladipo. Miles Turner, I think, has a lot of value still in this league, but he's kind of, he's kind of stalemated a little bit. He's kind of stagnated, I should say, rather, in terms of his development. The Pacers are in a weird spot in this draft because, like you said, they don't have a first round pick. They're drafting at 54, which, I mean, for all intents and purposes, could be a draft and stash player that we've never heard of at 54, or it could be a guy that a guy that maybe dropped further, a college star that maybe dropped further than we expected. But they have the assets, they have the players that could potentially be on the move to trade into the first round and probably trade relatively high into the first round. When you talk about Oladipo and you talk about Miles Turner as two guys that could be touchable, could be expendable. Those are guys that could get you into the top 10, depending on what team you trade them to, especially in a draft that's fairly weak. So the Pacers still have plenty of options in this draft, despite not having a first-round pick or a pick in the top 50 even.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, in terms of how high they can go, is going to depend on how individual teams value Oladipo and Turner. Oladipo was an all-star player, had a sensational playoff series against the Cavs a couple years ago, in which he really, I think for a lot of people, really arrived in this league. And of course, last season didn't start off as great, and then he, went down with a serious quad injury. Came back this year, played well, but definitely hasn't looked like the Oladipo we saw in that first year in Indiana. So, what is his value in the open market on this contract year? Turner is signed long term, so that may give him a little more value considering when you get this is a guy that's going to be there wherever he goes. He doesn't have much leverage to get himself to another team, but as you said, he's a younger player that I think some people have been waiting to reach that all-star caliber that he just seems to be just a little bit below. He's a very good player, and I love Miles Turner, but he just hasn't quite gotten to that level. So that's what's going to be fascinating about the Pacers is if they do explore the trade market as a way to rebuild and move up in this draft, how high they'll go will depend on just how teams view these guys. If somebody thinks Oladipo is a guy from 2 years ago, then I'm gonna talk about Charlotte at 3. I think that's he's that good a player. You know what I'm saying? Where someone like MJ might decide I'll take the plunge. But before we get into all the trade scenarios and what they'll do at 54, let's talk about the Pacers coming into this offseason beyond the trade scenarios that could be happening. So as I said, the Pacers, number 54 pick in the draft, they finished this season with a 45-28 record. For team needs, I put athleticism. That to me was a glaring issue in the Miami series. They're a team that's really skilled, but they don't match up in terms of speed, in terms of athleticism, in terms of quickness, in terms of vertical athleticism. And they did an exceptional job all season of really just playing great team ball and maximizing the skill that they have. But I think when it comes to playing these really, really good teams, I think their lack of athleticism showed in a certain spot. Oladipo, he's normally a great athlete, but he was still working back from an injury. Bubble Jordan, T.J. Warren had a great time on Orlando, but again, not a great athlete. Turner has not a great athlete. Sabonis, not a great athlete. So you get the Griff Brogdon, not a great athlete. So they could definitely improve the athletic profile, I think, of this team, which is part of the mandate that they wanted to play faster as well. I also put outside shooting. The Pacers were not really a great 3-point shooting team. Some of the players I think they would hoped could have helped the 3-point shooting really didn't do all that much. Doug McDermott, T.J. Leaf. There are plenty of guys on that team that maybe you would
Jeremy
think.
Lamb got hurt.
Lamb got hurt, and that's a huge one because he's normally an excellent 3-point shooter. So they were one of the bottom teams when it comes to 3-pointers made and 3-point field goal percentage. They're going to have to find some shooting somewhere in this offseason. That's despite, I think, Justin Holiday having a good year, and he's a free agent. So outside shooting and then penetrators was the last thing I put. They need someone that can get into the paint and cause havoc besides Oladipo and Brogdon. They don't really have a lot of guys from the wing and guard position who you feel like really put a lot of pressure on the defense. I think they hope Aaron Holiday could eventually be that guy. He's a young player, and he showed flashes of certainly being a dynamic offensive scorer. But they don't have anyone that I think you put on your scouting report if you're an opposing team and says that they have some guys. I think Brogdon and Oladipo, but I think for the large majority of that team, they don't have a lot of guys. I think put the fear in you when it comes to pick and roll action and ISO action. So they need to get some more shot creators, more guys who can get into the paint and penetrate. Free agents, Justin Holiday. I think that's kind of a big one. I think that he played really well in the playoffs. I think Justin Holiday's just an underrated player in the NBA. I like him when he's on the Knicks. I like him when he's on the Bulls. Everywhere he goes, I like the way he plays. He's a solid role player. Knows his role on a team. As a 3-and-D guy. So he's gonna be missed if they can't bring him back. I think they would like to try to get him back. Carl Sampson came in. He's also a free agent. Elise Johnson. Then you got Brian Bowen and Naz Mitru Long on 2-way deals. So Kendall, when it comes to, I'm gonna talk about trade up targets first, real quick. So to me, I gotta say, okay, well, what are the teams who will be interested in the guys they have? So I looked at the two teams. I looked at Charlotte because I think that Jordan is always looking for a star, and I think he's probably tired of where they've been in the last few years, where they're kind of middling. They have a high draft pick this year, but they haven't really been a team.
They moved up. Like they weren't.
Yeah, and they moved up this year exactly. So and they lost Kemba Walker, which means I'm sure they lost a lot of dollars when it came to ticket sales and interest in the team. So they're gonna need a star. They're gonna need somebody that could. Yes, and he's and Oladipo's a Jordan Brand guy. That's an excellent point. I didn't even think about that. So to me, I looked at Charlotte as a potential trade partner with Indiana, and I said, let's say you can move Oladipo to Charlotte, and you can get up to number 3. And to me, if you're Indiana, I'm throwing a parade because then I get a chance to get someone like maybe Anthony Edwards potentially at 3 if he doesn't go to 1 or 2.
Are you swapping Nick Batum as well? You probably have to take Nick Batum out there.
Probably have to. I think it's worth it.
You don't know what you do.
Yeah, and I think that's worth it. I mean, I think the Pacers are going to be very open-minded about their approach to next season. I think they understand that they're never going to get out of the East with the nucleus that they have. It's not a bad nucleus. They're a fun team to watch in terms of how they play together as a unit, but it's just not a championship contender. So I think they're going to be very open-minded about what they could do to get young, exciting, fresh talent, cheap talent, because they also got a lot of big contracts, a lot of big salaries. Obviously Oladipo's on a 1-year deal. When we count Oladipo, Sabonis, and Turner, that's a lot of money invested in 2 guys who don't want to be there. So if I look at this draft and I see Edwards slipping, somehow he doesn't go 1 or 2, I'm calling Charlotte. I'm getting on the phone and say, hey man, I'll take Batum off your hands, and I'll take whatever else I may have to take off your hands. I'll give you Oladipo, who's on a 1-year deal. So if you're Jordan, if you're afraid of making a long-term commitment, you won't have to. But he's a star player, and I get a chance to Anthony Edwards, a guy who I think fits a need. Again, penetrating and shooting being 2 issues. I think Edwards will be a good NBA shooter. I think obviously he can get in the paint. So if I was the Pacers, I know it may be ambitious, but that's the first person I'm calling if I see Edwards fall. I think he's a good fit for them.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, he's Oladipo 2.0. We talked about it. We
Yeah,
both
exactly.
compared him to Oladipo in our comparisons videos, but um, it seems a little. I feel like Oladipo. I don't know. Maybe I'm misrepresenting his value, but I don't know if you can get into the top 5 with Victor Oladipo unless the team
But remember, Ken,
was
this is
very
a weaker draft. You know, that's something I've read a lot
yeah
in our preparation for
we could
this. You
draft.
know, the value for these picks that are very high is not going to be as much as it
Seems
has
high.
been in recent years.
Yeah, it seems low. I would say, look, I mean, if I was Charlotte, you gave me another young player on this team, Goga Bitadze, you gave me Aaron Holiday, then I think the conversation becomes more interesting. Or look, I mean, look, Charlotte has never been mistaken to be the most rational franchise. Maybe they do just take Oladipo without the insurance that the insurance he's gonna stay, and without the assurance that he's gonna be healthy. But I do agree that look, a healthy Victor Oladipo is absolutely worth that third pick in this draft because, like you said, it's not the strongest pick in this draft, or not the strongest draft rather that we've seen. That's an interesting proposal. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, Oladipo is obviously very similar to Anthony Edwards, but Edwards much younger. Kind of gives you what Oladipo couldn't give you this year because he was a little hampered. I think Oladipo should be fine.
And I think I could make a drunk man's argument that Oladipo with the pieces in Charlotte absolutely would compete for a playoff spot.
I
You,
mean,
you got you got if you keep Graham and Rozier, you got Oladipo now in the fold. Graham goes to the bench, so he's a six man again where he should be. Um,
more
Bridges and Washington take a step up. Okay, the center position is still a mess, but we already know that.
so you should be better than Washington, maybe.
Right.
That's not a guarantee, but that's a maybe. Chicago, we'll see what happens with Chicago, but you probably should be better than them.
We know Brooklyn's gonna be in the playoffs, so they'll
Yeah,
return.
Brooklyn's gonna be in it this year. So now it goes from 3 kind of open spots to 2, or it was 2 this year. Now it's kind of 1 because now it's like 4 or 5 bad teams.
But you may
fighting for one
assume that
spot.
if the Pacers do go into fire
Yeah,
sale mode, that might be a spot
yeah,
that opens up.
yeah, yeah. That could be 2. But yeah,
Like I said, I'm saying drunk man argument. I'm not sure if sober EJ is gonna jump on that
yeah.
ledge
And we
completely,
know
but I
Mike
think
fancies
Jordan.
a tequila drinker, so
Yeah,
he may not.
Jordan. He gets enough tequila and smokes a few cigars in him. He might convince himself that maybe that's a move that he would
So
look at. What about you, Kendall? Do you have any targets for a trade up potential?
trading up. So I'll hit more right now on them at 54 because I think that
Okay.
before I get to the trade up because I think that they're actually in an interesting spot where I think at 54 they actually could find, and look, 54 is very low, and look, obviously you could also trade up in the second round, but if you need to, but they're actually in an interesting spot because I think this draft is very deep at the point guard position. And I'm not saying, I mean, look, they like Aaron Holiday, they have Malcolm Brogdon, who's more of a combo guard, but can certainly play the point. But if you're talking about getting outside shooting and um, getting penetrators, I think about at 54 could, or even in just anywhere in the second round if you can move up, could Peyton Pritchard be available? Because Peyton Pritchard at Oregon certainly showed the ability to get to the basket. Obviously, you talked about outside shooting also being a concern for the Pacers. Peyton Pritchard, really, really good shooter. Honestly, Peyton Pritchard is, I think, a better version of the guy they already have at that spot, which is TJ McConnell. Um, he's not as feisty as TJ McConnell, not the scrappy.
McConnell's a great defender.
Yeah, he's not the scrappy
Hmm.
defender that TJ McConnell is, but Pritchard way more talented offensively. McConnell always had trouble shooting beyond 18 feet. Peyton Pritchard has range from almost 40 feet, and can get to the basket similarly to TJ McConnell, but he's just much more of a threat from the outside, which makes him more of a threat in the pick and roll. So Peyton Pritchard's a guy, but also Marcus Howard could be available. Another guy,
And
electric.
I'll tell you a guy. I'll tell you a guy at 54 that I would look at for them. And this is a guy that he really. Every time I watched him play this year, I always, and not necessarily a point guard per se, though I think he can definitely handle the point. But every time I watched him play the last 2 years, really, I was just like, that guy's impressive. I'm gonna talk about Skylar Mays from LSU.
Interesting.
Um, Another guy that has range. Another guy that can get to the paint. An aggressive scorer. Big shot maker. I don't know. I think again with the second round, man, you're talking about a lot of flyers.
Yeah.
If you told me he worked out in the NBA, wouldn't be surprised. I think that he's a good ball. He's a very good ball handler. He's a little bit in between positions, and I get that. But again, we're kind of in this NBA. That's like really doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, like, it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Because now what used to be, you not having a real role, now it's versatility. Yeah. So to me, I basically play the one and the two. I like his competitiveness. I like him as a player. I think that if I was Indiana and I got him at 54, I would say we might have something here.
Another guy that I like in this draft, you haven't really talked about him, but and that's going to be a second round guy. I like Emmanuel Quickly from Kentucky. You talk about presenting that outside shooting. He was Kentucky's best shooter last year. And look, we've seen he's a big guard. Came into Kentucky, obviously the 5-star point guard, but played with Ashton Hagans, who I don't think he expected necessarily to be playing with because Ashton Hagans was a reclass guy. But came in with Ashton Hagans, had to come back for a second year. Then they bring in Tyrese Maxey as well. So now they're playing 3 point guards in the backcourt, and then none of them really were benefited by that. So Quickly is a guy that probably could be more of a point guard, but has learned to play off the ball. He's a big guard anyway, and certainly can shoot the basketball. And look, we've seen with Kentucky guards recently, and Kentucky players in general, particularly Kentucky guards, that the ones that kind of weren't in the best case scenario for them at Kentucky in terms of the situation have really thrived in the NBA more so than they were at Kentucky. They were better than they were at Kentucky. I mean, Tyler Hero, Jamal Murray, Devin Booker, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, obviously for those guys, you always have a Malik Monk, but you can also mention De'Aaron Fox. I mean, the Kentucky guards, obviously, in the last 3-4 years have been terrific. So you would think if 3 of them are going to get drafted this year, more than likely. We talk about Ashton Hagans Quickly and Tyrese Maxey. You kind of feel like one of them is going to hit. It's just the law of averages when it comes to Kentucky guards.
And real quickly, Kendall, what about a trade-up option?
Yeah, and a trade-up option, I mean, I thought about Cleveland at 5.
I did too.
I think Miles Turner in Cleveland, if you told me that you could get Kevin Love, like if you told me you had to take Kevin Love and you could trade into that 5 spot.
They got to move Drummond.
You would think you'd have to move Drummond, but I mean that may not be that hard. I mean,
yeah. I mean, they may be willing, I think is what you would say.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, honestly, like we talked about it in our Cavs video. The Cavs are so much of a mess that part of me is like, look, if you have both of them, just whatever. You know, you had Tristan Thompson and Andre Drummond last year, and that didn't make any sense. So why not do that both of them? But yeah, if you have to take Kevin Love's contract, look, that's something that's not great for Indiana. But Kevin Love's not a scrub. He's going to help them win games. Probably not the best fit with Sabonis in the front court, but again, going to help you win games. And if you're able to move into the top 5 to take on Kevin Love, now you're telling yourself, all right, now we can maybe move into getting another big. If we're moving Miles Turner, you can get Obi Toppin. You can get, maybe if Wiseman falls, James Wiseman, Onyeka Okongwu. But if you're getting Kevin Love and you already have Sabonis and you drafted Bitadze, then you're probably thinking, let's get another guard or a wing in here. And then that's where you look at Killian Hayes. You look at Isaac Okoro potentially to play with a TJ Warren type guy. I mean, I think that's an interesting thing. And, you know, it may not be Cleveland. It could be Washington as well, trying to unload someone like John Wall. But that's going to be the question with the Pacers, is that they're sort of in no man's land right now where they're not going to compete for a championship. Are they willing to take on a bad contract if it means they can move into the top 10? Because they don't have a pick.
Yeah.
So now you don't have a pick, so you can't draft really anybody that's going to change life for you right now. This isn't the best draft, but you're willing to take on a bad contract in order to move into the top 10 or move into the first round even to help you improve your roster.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's going to be that's going to be the question. And, you know, between how other teams value these guys that could be on the market and how willing the Pacers are to take certain contracts to unload those guys. I think Pacers, despite being 54, could be a very important team to watch. Hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown and our virtual draft war room talking about the Pacers. Of course, you can catch all of our videos on the NBA draft teams this year on our channel, New Generation Media on YouTube. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a comment if you liked this video. Let us know what you think the Pacers do. Take it easy, guys. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Peace.